Welcome to the Knowing Me podcast. I'm Joanne, and I love to help people rewrite their lives' narratives by revisiting their past and reshaping their today. What is it about human nature that makes us want to take complete control of everything we do? We want to have the first word, the last word, and every word in between. We want to be the one who initiates the idea, brings it to its conclusion, and makes it look pretty with our name written all over it. I suppose that there are many answers to that question, but I would like to share what I have learned from my life about that very question, if you would allow me to. I was wounded by the abuse, sexual, physical, emotional, psychological, and spiritual, from my mother. Don't get me wrong, I love my mother, and she was known as a wonderful person outside of our home. But in the home was a different story. My mother had been abused. She also had a personality disorder, and so that affected all of her relationships with me and my siblings. My father was a very nice man, but he did not protect us. He later shared with me that he thought he was protecting us by not being alone with us or talking to us. When I reached out to my mother and she would attack me, or to my father and he would not respond, it was as if I wasn't seen. And I lost my balance and I retreated like a wounded child, even as an adult. And I vowed that they would not hurt me again. I decided not to reach out at all. I would be my protector and my defender. I did not need anyone. I found a way to control my world with workaholism, which governed and dominated my life for more than 55 years. And I still struggle with it to some extent, although not near as much as I used to. I believed the lie that people might not like or care about me, but they could always applaud or compliment the work done for them. It propelled me each day to give all I could and more than I should have, but it was the only way I thought I could be accepted. Jump ahead a few decades, and there I was, working as hard as I could. I was exhausted most of the time, and maybe some of you have felt that way too. And yet I felt as if I was in this bubble watching the world go by. I was empty, alone, and my heart was screaming to a world that didn't seem able to hear me. Will somebody please love me? Please. I realized that in trying to be in control, I had separated myself from others. In all my relationships, I was on the outside looking in. Oh, I was fun to be with and could joke, sing, and laugh along with anyone else and everybody else. But inside I was empty and lonely, making my home on the edges of relationship. I never let others in because I was so petrified that I would be rejected, ignored, or hurt again. I have worked and lived in Bolivia for 35 years, and God has very graciously given me, a single woman, children. He has blessed my life. He's taught me so much through them. I think it wasn't so much what I did for them, but what they did for me and how God used that in all of our lives. But this one day, I looked at my adopted daughter and I felt so much love for her. I just wanted to reach out and hug her. I was overwhelmed with what I felt for her. I wanted to bring her close, but I didn't do it. I was afraid that she did not love me as I loved her. And for me, it was easier to withhold love than to be rejected. How I regret that to this day. Our relationship is much better, and I have learned to hug, but it's taken a while to get there. But all of us, you and me, have chosen to protect ourselves in very different ways. There is a hunger and a thirst in us to be loved. This thirst compels us, motivates us, and consumes us as we search for what our hearts long for. Love. Sadly, none of us have been loved in the way we were intended to be loved. For many, the cry of their heart is this all there is? Is there no one out there that can love me? We look at the outside of people. They seem to have it all together and to have no problems. But the cry of their heart is the same as yours and mine. Is there no more to life than this? Is there not somebody who can see me and love me for who I am? I would like you to imagine with me for a minute and think of our capacity to love as a tank. When I draw this on the board for my students, I put a big heart. That's my love tank. And what we're going to like you to do is to look at the people in your lives. Suppose you think of your grandparents. How full do you think their love tanks were? My grandfather on my father's side was very stern, very correct, not harsh, but his character was, how should I put this? He wasn't very affectionate. So you kind of never really knew where you stood. My grandmother was very loving, very submissive to her husband, but she lavished her love and attention on my father's younger brother. So suppose that my grandparents' love tanks were even half to 3/4 full, but say half full. How much did they give my dad? So how full was my father's love tank when he was 20 years old? Suppose it was 1/4 full, between 1/4 and a half. And my mother, her father was abusive. He was unfaithful in his marriage. He came from an alcoholic family. How full do you think his love tank was? Let's say half, just because it's being generous. My mother's mother was in a wheelchair. She had arthritis. This woman who needs her husband, and my grandfather is out with other women. Also, my mom is his little girl, and he was one of the ones that abused my mother, along with his brothers. My grandmother later wrote a letter to my mother, which I read, and she apologized for treating my mom the way she did. So how much do you think my grandmother gave to my mother? If my grandmother's love tank was half full, how much? So my mom enters into this relationship with my father, and her love tank is maybe, let's say, 1/4 full. And my dad's love tank is maybe 1/4 to half full or 1/3 full. They get married, and what happens is when people get married, they're getting married so that the other person can fill up their love tank. But how much did my dad have to give my mother, and how much did my mother have to give my dad? Very little. So then comes me into the world, and my dad is silent because that's the easiest way to deal with my mother's personality disorder. When I was 11, my mother accused me of sleeping with my father, and so I said in my childish immaturity, I won't be close with my father. He withdraws. There's no protection. So how much did I receive from my dad? My mother, on the other hand, was the abuser in our family. I was not close to her. I was criticized continually, compared by her continually. So how much love did I receive? So here comes me, Joanne. How full is my love tank? How much do I have to give to somebody else? How full is your love tank? How much do you have to give to your husband or your friends or your children or your parents? Or are you like me just saying, is there nobody out there that can love me? Is there nobody out there that can fill my love tank, give me something that can quench this thirst to be loved? The truth is, most of us didn't get very much at all from our parents. We live in a generation where maybe everybody was working, they were busy, they were tired, I don't know. But in my 43 years of counseling, the cry of the majority of the people is, I don't feel loved. I don't feel loved. And because of this, because your and my love tanks are empty, we try to fill them in whatever way that we can. This is a natural response to the emptiness we feel. When we are thirsty, we go for water. When we are hungry, we go for food. When we are love hungry, we look for anything to fill this love hunger. All of us are born with a desire for acceptance, which is the desire to belong. It's in us to belong to a group, to a church, to a family, to just have a friend. Significance, where it's essential for us to matter in someone's life, to leave our mark. Is what I do important for you? Does it make a difference in your life? And for security, which is the need to know that we are loved and valued by someone. It's a place where we feel safe and protected, and we have the freedom and confidence to venture out. These are 3 basic necessities of every human being. These longings are part of who we are and who we were created to be. It is not just some mean joke that God gave us these desires. He didn't give us these desires so that we could be empty. He gave us these desires for a purpose. Because of the fall, because of Adam and Eve's sin, because of our sin, they are never really satisfied. Unconsciously, we all seek to satisfy our deep longings with ways that, regardless of whether they're healthy or not, end up being destructive to our lives and in our relationships. A person who feels alone and yearns for companionship finds in food the tranquilizer for the emotional pain of loneliness. The Christian or person who thinks they are a loser and wants to be valued engages in many ministries, many works, always serving people, always doing things to cover the pain of feeling worthless. The person who yearns for acceptance and fears being rejected seeks to please everyone to avoid the pain of rejection. When our yearning for intimacy and connection is not satisfied, we try to find ways to avoid the pain that causes this in us. We are dissatisfied and we look for something that numbs this pain and gives us temporary and false satisfaction. Food, pleasing others, pornography, being involved in the church or some other volunteer work, ministry, religion, cocaine, alcohol, sports, TV, sleep, reading, education. You can just add to that list because every person is going to find their way to fill that void in their lives. The number and variety of ways that we try to satisfy our longings are legion. We must realize that the ways we have developed to fill our need for acceptance, significance, and security will never work. They are counterfeit and will ultimately end up enslaving us. We must start naming them for what they are, addictions. When you think about it, I've shared about my workaholism. And you have this point where you feel bad, you go out and work and somebody says, "Oh, Joanne did a great job." And you get this little, "Oh, that felt nice. That was a little warm fuzzy, And then you go and you work that hard again. And this time they don't say, "How wonderful, Joanne is." They go, "Thanks." And the next time you work that hard, they don't say anything because now that's your norm. That's what you have to do to just be acceptable now because you've made them believe that this is your standard. And so if you want that warm fuzzy, what do you have to do? You have to work harder. And you keep working harder. "Oh man, Joanne, that was great." But you can only work to a certain point. And then you work hard and you work hard and you work hard and the return is less and less and less. There's no compliments. There's people that said to me, "Oh, Joanne, we know that when you say you'll do something, we don't have to worry about it." So they don't even help me. They don't even think about me. They just wash their hands and say, "Joanne's got it. She'll do it." And so I become lonelier and lonelier and the work is consuming. The work is an addiction because if I don't do it, then how will I get accepted? Then how will I be loved? Then how will I be appreciated? I have become addicted to working. You may be addicted to sleeping or to food or to pornography or to masturbation or to many things. You may be addicted to religion. You may have a biblical verse for everything, but you never enter into relationship because all of this about this way that we try to fill our needs and satiate our thirst is a way to feel accepted. It's also a way to protect us from being hurt again. And so we keep going to these things and it doesn't do for us what it did before. And we get more desperate and more down in ourselves and we get caught up in these addictions. The thing that I would like us to understand is that when we are caught up in these addictions, and they are that, we always think that it's because the person cannot control their impulses or because they like what is happening to them. And the thing is that usually we go to an addiction or a way of doing things, a habitual way of doing things, because we are trying to cover up a pain or a hurt or a sorrow that we don't know how to deal with. And many of our ways of dealing with life, we get and we develop as children and adolescents. And these are the most confusing times, especially if we come from a home that is dysfunctional, that is abusive. God created us to find in Him our acceptance, significance, and security. He desired that we would love Him as He loved us. But Eve was deceived, Adam said nothing, and sin entered the world. And from the first moment of sin, we can see that man and women tried to cover their sin in their way by sewing together leaves to cover their nakedness. They were afraid, ashamed, and guilty. So they hid from the only one that had ever and would ever truly love them. And you and I do the same thing today. We don't sew leaves together, but we work hard, play hard, eat hard, drink hard, sleep hard, whatever. Instead of turning to Him, we attempt to satisfy our love hunger in our way. And then we get angry and frustrated when all our well-laid plans fail. And it seems that we're just not good enough and God has let us down again. And how many of us have not felt this? I've worked so hard. I've done so much. Why are they responding like this when we begin to get angry at God? I'm trying to serve you, God. I'm trying to be the good mother or the good worker or the good spouse or the good daughter. And it's just like banging my head against a brick wall. Why are you allowing this? I'd like you to just take a moment and breathe deep and ask yourself if God is not responding because we're doing things our way and not His way. We all try to fix our lives up from the outside in instead of the inside out. And that is our most significant problem. That is what is wrong with our lives. It doesn't work. Has what you have been doing independently of God been working for you? I doubt it. It gives us the illusion of control, but our soul is still crying out for more at the end of the day. God designed us. He created us to be dependent on Him, to trust Him, to believe in Him, and to have faith in Him because He knows us better than we know ourselves. He is the only one with a full love tank. Therefore, He is the only one who can fill our need for love. He offers us so much and we keep resisting His offer. We keep going back to our ways, hoping that this time we will be filled. We are hoping that this time things will go better. When Paul struggled with doing things his way in Romans 7:18-25, he doesn't cry out, "What can I do to change?" His prayer is, "Who will free me from this life that is dominated by sin and death?" Who? Not what. Who? And then he answers his own question. Thank God. The answer is in Jesus Christ, our Lord. Remember that I said I couldn't hug my daughter? That moment was the catalyst that pushed me to deal with my way of doing things and trying to control my own life. It was the day that hope returned and there was a light at the end of the tunnel. It was the day I decided to stop protecting myself from the consequences of living and to embrace life as a gift. I have learned that living is not a spectator sport. I'm not looking through the glass anymore. It is not our place to sit in the stands and protect ourselves and watch the action from a distance. Being born, existing, means participating in the game of life. It is getting dirty and getting out in life where the opposition is powerful and challenging at times. It is deciding to take the risk to live your life to the fullest. Be the you that you've always dreamt of being. It is scary, but you need to evaluate the risk that you will be taking, not in terms of the probability of success, but rather in terms of its value to the goal. Every time we step out and trust God, every time we take this step in life to be becoming what He has created us to be, we are creating something beautiful, not just in us, but in those around us. Winning at life only comes from a fierce determination to jump in with both feet and to give every ounce of energy towards the goal of living abundantly. It means looking inside instead of trying to fix up the outside and allowing God to touch you in such a way that you will never be the same again. I'm on this journey. And once again, I invite you to walk with me. I hope you have a wonderful day. If you enjoyed our time together, I'd ask that you would consider coming back again, but also sharing this with somebody else that might need what you've heard today. The next time that we're together, we'll be talking about embracing the life you have.